Hi there, this is going to be a panel discussion designed for the surging Scottish hip-hop and grime community. Basically, we're going to be focusing on how the genre can be better recognised and further developed on the scene nationally. Overall, this panel is meant to break down the negative preconceptions surrounding Scottish hip-hop and grime. So, Steg, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's STEG G. I'm a hip-hop artist, and I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Dumfries coming live from cyberspace. Hope you're all doing good. Thanks for coming to the meeting today. We're going to talk a lot about hip-hop. I'm an artist from Glasgow. I've been doing it for a long time. Also teach hip-hop skills as well. And I'm looking forward to chatting to my colleagues on the panel today.
And hi, I'm Alana Hepburn. I have done hip-hop events in Glasgow for nearly 10 years and grime events for 2 years. I do stage management and artist liaison as well. So.
I'm Nova, also known as Nova Scotia the Truth. I'm a rap artist based in Edinburgh. I've been longlisted for the Scottish Album of the Year award this year, and I was nominated for Best Hip Hop of the SAMA Awards last year. I do a few other things as well to do with music, but they're usually dealing with genres other than hip hop and grime. So, yeah.
Cool. Hi, folks. I'm Dave. I rap under the name Solareye, and I play in a live hip hop band called Stanley Odd. I'm a rapper, producer, songwriter. And like everyone else here, then I've been involved in the hip-hop community in Scotland in all sorts of ways for quite a while. I'm also, like Steg, an educator and a hip-hop scholar, so I'm interested in ways that we can talk about hip-hop academically and really represent the quality that people are making and doing here in Scotland, and then kind of bring that to a table further afield.
Perfect. And just to kick off the theme of discussion, so we're going to just start talking about how historically, why has hip-hop and grime possibly been overlooked in the past? So, Steg, would you like to?
Lots of reasons why hip-hop and grime have been overlooked. Been overlooked in the UK full stop, although that has been catching up over the last 5 or 6 years. In Scotland, we don't really have a media. And doing media is, what does exist is basically, in my opinion, leaning more towards traditional music in Scotland. That seems to get the coverage, that seems to get the column inches, whereas this grassroots music that came from America doesn't get accepted in the media over here. And it doesn't get accepted in the media, then it's not getting broadcast out to the communities, to the people that want to get involved in these art forms. So the participants, the potential participants are not really picking up on it as they should because of that. So yeah, it's a slow burner, hip-hop, grime in Scotland and the UK, but it's something that can be stopped. Something that's definitely can be stopped, and regardless of no media support, it's a growing, burgeoning scene.
Perfect. And Nova?
Yeah, I agree with Steg. I think to do in terms of media visibility, there's a bit of a problem things could be better. And also in the UK, there's a very London-centric vibe with music and urban music in general. So I think that's probably got something to do with it as well.
Dave, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with both you guys. I think the London-centric idea is something that is held back art and in Scotland across the field. I also think there's people's preconceptions and about what hip hop and rap is, and I think people don't understand how much local voices and truths and actually representing yourself are a core part of hip hop and grime and rap music. And because, like Steg says, it comes from America, people assume that it can't be done authentically and come from somewhere else, when actually one of its core things, once you dive into it, is that it's about finding ways of interpreting it and then making it about representing your own culture and your own spaces.
Yeah, I'd say, just to elaborate off what you were saying as well, I always find it really interesting with the divide of hip-hop coming from America, but if you take somebody like Robbie Burns, for example, he is, 260 years old, if he was still alive. So he's actually older than hip-hop altogether. So poetry and word formations and speaking in a sort of dialect that was more poetic than a normal conversation, like this was already in our roots historically. So I think with the image of it being America, you know, and it being maybe stylized as black, Scotland maybe had that kind of divide with it because it didn't seem like it came from our roots. But realistically, it actually did, because we've been doing poetry for nearly 300 years and that is part of hip hop. So it's a stigma almost of it being, oh, well, it doesn't look Scottish, so therefore it can't be. So it's almost that kind of national thing of Scotland, that because it doesn't look a certain way, then it can't be from the roots. And that's what I think needs broken down more, is that historic approach of, okay, it actually was like that, so we need to tell people that we have actually done poetry and we have actually used hip-hop as a means through other forms of music in Scotland for many years. So to kind of use that to make people aware today that it's not just about the rap, it's the style and it's the message it gives out as well. You know, the message of where we kind of come from and stuff, that's all kind of hip-hop, and that speaks to me quite vividly more. So I'd say it's just about letting people know today that those roots have always been tied.
Yeah.
So it's maybe not been apparent to them that, you know, it's been part of our country for a while.
And see, like Steg says about communities, like hip-hop's just folk music with caps instead of cardigans.
Yeah.
It's just, do you know what I mean? It's about your communities and representing the spaces you come from. And then, I mean, from a rapper's perspective, it's about playing with words and enjoying language and then bringing in all different elements of that language and creating something new and exciting and fun out of it. Yeah. And being allowed to do that. And across Scotland, culturally, we have a bad habit of telling people you're from here, so you can't go there, or you're this type of person, so you can't be that type of person, or these sorts of things. And as human beings, that's how we make sense of the world. Mm-hmm. So it's understandable, but it's instantly limiting, and it stops you being able to go places. Because you did these things in your past, you'll never be able to go to these places and all these sorts of things. So there's a lot about that, about restrictions and breaking down barriers to sort of enable people to kind of see what it's all about.
But as you said there, Dave, a lot of these barriers are in the people, the participants' heads as well, and we need to get the barriers dealt with too. It's not just the media, but if we, as a country, as a culture, believe we can't do that because it's imported, then we're never really going to do it. But we need to realise that actually this is just music, full stop. And Talib Kweli, Black Star rapper, great quote from him. He says, he was asked to describe hip-hop. He says, hip-hop is a vehicle. That's it. Meaning it can take people where the people want to go, where that want to be, where that's Scottish people expressing themselves, people in New York expressing themselves, people having good times, just getting involved in the music, people making livings out of music. It's a vehicle. And that's what we should be embracing in Scotland, this vehicle for positive change, whether it be for a personal level, community level, or even just an art level as well.
Yeah, I agree that self-belief is something that needs to be fostered in the scene a lot, because I've encountered so many artists that could be so much further than where they're at, but they don't have the drive because they don't have the self-belief, so then they don't be consistent, and they just end up, not reaching anyone because they don't have a clear path of what they're doing. So yeah, I think that is definitely a point as well.
And we've never seen ourselves reflected back in the media as like a rapper or a Scottish hip-hop artist, a successful model reflected back at us, so we can say, or the community as a whole can say, actually we can do this and we can be embraced and we can do this at a high successful level. Still to see that, it's maybe starting to manifest. COVID's probably slowed it down quite a bit, but it's not going to stop that. But until we actually get rappers and musicians or hip-hop artists in, I'm not going to say charts, that sounds old school, but getting a good fan base, good listenership, getting exposure on the mainstream media, then this is going to be a challenge to get Scottish hip-hop and grime and drill and trap represented in this country.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that kind of moves us on to our second topic, which is, has it moved from the underground to the mainstream?
I think very much so, actually. I think very much so in the last few years in terms of getting out the underground. To me, the underground was before the internet.
Yeah.
And it was people in communities making hip-hop, without knowing about other communities making hip-hop. So they just went in their own bubble, and that was really, really underground. the internet's helped a lot to make people come together. But also there's things happening in our community, such as we've got the SAMAs, we've got the Album of the Year. Hip-hop artists are getting exposure in that. We've got hip-hop educational classes going on in our curriculums in education in Scotland. So I really think we've crossed over from the underground towards the more, for want of a better word, mainstream music society. And we're being accepted in the doors as a credible piece of music, whereas before it would be, rappers. A wee anecdote I always tell people as well, and it comes from rappers going into musical stores to buy mics, basically. Rapper goes into a music store to buy a microphone. Any music store. I won't name them. I want to buy a mic. I'm a rapper. Guy or the woman behind the counter will say, all you need is this here. We'll get you this £130 mic and a wee sound card at £100. Rock singer comes in looking for a mic. You need this £800 mic. So straight away hip-hop gets cheapened. Straight away they're saying, you only need the rubbish tools. We need the best tools. And we need the music people to treat hip-hop like they treat rock music and treat guitar music and give it the same resources. And don't tell, you're only a rapper. You can just use an SM58 if you're rapping. Or you're an opera singer. Well, there's that $2,000 Neumann mic for you.
Dynamic caliber.
No, we need to stop that classism in music as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there, totally in agreement. I think the mainstream underground thing's really interesting, and I think Steg's right. We're on a spectrum somewhere between the two, heading in the right direction. I think that the national award things really matter. So congratulations. I think it's amazing that Nova's longlisted for
me too.
Scottish Album of the Year. I think it's fantastic. And I think it's something that within the communities we should all celebrate, because whenever anybody is nominated for these things and for the SAMAs and all these sorts of things, all it does is shine a light more widely on what's happening.
And I actually think you are not only the first female, but one of the first hip-hop acts to have been shortlisted for the 20. So, because I think before that there was literally maybe one or two.
Hector Berserk, and
there was someone else.
Dave was there as well.
Yeah,
Stanley
so that's it.
Yeah.
Stanley Auden, Hector Berserk,
Hudson Mohawk,
and that's it.
Yeah,
but then Hudson Mohawk's electronic crossover. So,
but for that reason, it is so important, and it does also show how underrepresented as a genre or as a collection of musical communities that it still is.
Yep.
So it's totally to be celebrated. It's brilliant to see, and it really matters, you know. So I think these sorts of things emphasise that we are moving in the right direction, but also that there's still a lot more work for the media to do, and for people that do offer opportunities to open doors and give a wider reach.
There's also a lot more work hip-hop artists need to do as well, to be brutally frank about it. Obviously, the people in this room are putting in the work. That's why they're in this room. But there's a lot of hip-hop artists that think they can just rap and that's enough. They can just spit a couple of bars at a gig and that makes them a rapper. We actually need to make sure, you need to be skillful. You need to level yourself up. You need to invest in yourself, market yourself, promote yourself, make sure your skills are shit hot. Not just be full of bravado and confidence thinking that you're the main man or the main rapper. No, you need to actually put in the work to be a successful anything in this world. And I see a lot of Scottish artists not doing that. I think that's really bad in our culture, that very few of them will invest in themselves in terms of watching a YouTube video or buying a microphone or just studying the art and the craft. I think that's unfortunate and something that we really need to address and look at our culture and say, why is that? Why is your artists not really want to take themselves to the next stage of their own development and learn about the art, the culture, the process, the production, the marketing? Why are they just happy to spit bars? And then we sort of, we let that go as a collective as well. And that's maybe to the detriment of the people who's putting in the work. The minorities putting in the work get held back by 1,000 people that are sitting in their bedroom, rapping 16 bars a month and calling themselves a rapper.
And then turn up and fighting at gigs.
Yeah, I agree that in the mainstream areas and underground, there's more that could be done. There's a few artists that I've kind of come across that are based in Scotland that are pretty mainstream sounding. But I feel like, when gigs were going on, there was still kind of a trend that, you know, when big artists that were in our genres would come, sometimes there weren't enough local support, or sometimes there just wasn't any at all, which is something that you were tackling, you know, in your work a lot. And then, like, in terms of the underground, I think sometimes there could be a stronger, like, subculture in terms of events, live music events, and yeah, just like the culture, like, I don't know, like magazines and publications and stuff like that. That's just really like representing what's going on. And also like the self-belief issue that we mentioned earlier as well.
I think the magazines thing's really important, right? And again, this comes down to Scottish culture being able to finance our own media, because you get people, so Jonathan Rimmer comes to mind, right, who are fanatical about the culture, and all they want to do is write about it and raise it up and let people know about it. But you can only, Bram's another person like that, Bram Gabin, right? But you can only keep that energy up with no income coming back from it and no support for so long. So, and not that I've got answers for this, but it's then becomes about how can we sort of help support the media side of things as well as the music side of things. You know, and that has to be a reciprocal relationship where it's not just us as artists all the time going, why are you not writing about me, or who should be writing about me, but actually going, well, these guys, if we want to create a critical culture where people are actually engaging with the art and sharing it and talking about it and putting it on platforms, then there needs to be places for those folks to make a living out of it.
100%. There was, so not going to mention names, but there's a lot of newspapers or music papers in Scotland that I feel haven't really supported hip hop. They've never really wanted to post about people's albums, you know, share people's kind of, you know, events. And that for me as a promoter came up as a barrier. So that was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago that I actually had a bit of a rant to one of the biggest companies in Scotland, because I had been sending them content for ages, trying to get them writing about local artists who were supporting the mainstream artists that was coming, and there was just no connection there. And through working with other companies and like the SAMAs and stuff, and to get the kind of hip hop category more noticed, I had then found them emailing me, asking me, you know, what could they write about with hip hop and how could they include that. And I almost kind of felt like, okay, this is great that now they're wanting to be involved, but after trying to speak to them for so long about it, you think, well, what changed their mind in it? Is it now, you know, that we have kind of came from the underground and we are in the mainstream, that now all these, you know, kind of media outlets are now wanting to write about it because the bands aren't pushing it as much? And you have people like Stormzy, who is basically outright ruling the UK just now. He's got books out for kids, he's putting money into schools, he's, you know, really speaking up for a lot of his people. And for us, for now, people in Scotland to be like, oh, well, it's cool because, you know, London are pioneering it. But for all of us in this room, we've all done hip hop or that for so long that I find it quite refreshing now that we can move into the mainstream a wee bit more, and it is a bit more acceptable to open up a magazine, and for a Scottish magazine, and see hip hop be in the front page and it not be in the small bit at the back. So I do think that's getting a bit better, but it could be, you know, more blogs supporting the genre, more magazines kind of involved. And that's what I'm saying. Once that stigma of it not being the local indie band on the front page and it being a hip hop artist, I think that for me as a promoter is when it'll show that it's more accepted and it is more mainstream, because we are in between. Like you were saying, I think we are in between. Some of it's really mainstream, but some of it's still really underground. And if you walked up to someone in the street and said, oh yeah, who's your favourite hip hop artist from Scotland? You'd probably get a bit of a mixed review. So until that review becomes stronger and people can name people right away, you know, instead of going out and going, oh, who do you like in Scotland? Oh, I like Jerry Cinnamon. You know, it becomes these kind of well-known names. So it'd be so good, I think, to have that hip-hop or grime artist that becomes that known name like that. That, to me, that's when we would be more mainstream, I think. So.
Aye, and it would be nice if these things happened not as a reaction to the UK and London-based, like the size of artists there already, but that if sometimes that came from faith in Scottish artists before they had to look elsewhere.
Exactly, that's what I mean, yeah.
You know, like a lot of the time it feels like people have to actually get a representation and get respect from outside of Scotland. And then Scottish media goes, oh, they must be worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
That's what I felt.
you know, so it'd be nice to see that faith sort of developing within the country.
Yeah, I think in terms of mainstream as well, like kind of looking at the infrastructure, I'm just kind of wondering if there's any labels that support hip-hop or rap or urban music, like even independent labels. I can't really think of one off the top of my head.
Just up
like,
to standard.
Yeah, the
probably.
moves, I was going to say there's a couple of studios like up to standard, and there's one in Edinburgh called AOK. So that's like definitely a big step forward in terms of infrastructure, but I think the whole label thing is probably like, you know, that's a big deal. That's kind of a big gap in the market as well.
Big time, actually, because you've got, obviously, your Soma Records, Glasgow, your Lucky Me records from Edinburgh, and they're so prolific that you're like, okay, you know it's Soma, you know it's going to be techno, so that is, I guess, that kind of label kind of missing, especially more so now. I mean, you guys with Power Cut.
Just to say to someone who runs a label, labels are almost defunct these days due to the nature of social media, and I think it's a good thing, to be honest. But also, labels need to have an audience buying the product to be a label. And if there's no an audience buying the product, then you can be a label, you can be doing this and putting out good product, but how long can you sustain that for? So I really like the model. I actually like the democratic model of the internet, so people can make good tunes and put it out there. I think that's really fresh and really exciting. Labels great if there's an audience and infrastructure there, but at the moment we need hit records. And it can be on a hit record, can be, as we know, through TikTok, through Insta, through all the social medias. It doesn't need the traditional record label model anymore. And I find that exciting. And I think probably a breakout artist can come from Scotland and bypass all that and be a TikTok star and be an Insta star and just bypass the whole outlet and then have the record companies playing catch up to them later as well. So I think the label thing's good. It's not necessarily something that I would recommend for Scottish artists or hip-hop to put too much weight on. Even Def Jam struggles in 2020. So just do it for yourselves, build our own infrastructure and create our own pathways.
I think there's a really interesting thing that Steg's picked up on there as well about the democratisation of making music. So the means of production has never been so available to all of us in terms of get an interface, get a microphone, get a bit of software and we can make music. The means of distribution has never been so available to us in terms of CD Baby, New Bands, whoever you want to work with, and distributing your music so that it's on the right places. So that whole democratisation of music production is happened and it's amazing. But the thing I think that's been shored up in the last 5 to 10 years is like some of the socials. So like Facebook, you can have thousands of people liked what you do. If you don't pay them, they don't show the people who've said they're interested.
Yeah.
So then it becomes, like Steg's saying, finding new innovative ways of engaging. So TikTok's super successful for that just now, I think, isn't it? For finding ways. But probably, I always thought it probably suited some styles of music more than others. But so in that way, I guess it's trying to find new ways of figuring it out for yourself. So there's lots of exciting stuff about being able to make music and release it just now.
So just to bring us on to the next question, what would you say the benefits and the cultural impacts of this music form?
For the benefits, we could be going all day, but the benefits can be personal. From hip-hop will take you on a journey, like the metaphor of hip-hop being a vehicle. Even if you're not doing it to a professional level, you're still going to meet interesting people. You're still going to do interesting things and go to interesting places and do things that you would normally not get to do as an average person in the street. So that's some of the benefits. The other benefits is it's a voice for the community. As Dave says, I always like to link Scottish hip-hop to folk music because it's people talking about folky things that people are into, whether it be drugs, sex, community, whatever. That's the currency of music forever. We've got that language gift where we can express ourselves on our music so much. which is brilliant. And that's definitely a benefit. There's lots of benefits.
Perfect.
I think writing lyrics can be like a catharsis, and I always think that's a way to kind of represent yourself how you want to be seen, like kind of casting aside other people's opinions of you, and you just choose how you represent yourself. You can even reflect on your flaws in a interesting way. So I think that's one of the benefits.
That's a really good way to put that, Nova, actually, like to reflect on your flaws as well. So like to, as a benefit, I'm sure, you know, most of Scotland, we've probably suffered with a lot of mental health, probably not came from the best sort of area and stuff, and maybe had a difficult upbringing. So to represent yourself in your truest form is to show everything that's not perfect about you. And that's always the kind of scariest thing, is to, in Scotland, people will obviously kind of attack you for that as well. But the benefit of it is coming out fresh and pure and raw and showing people what you have. So once you kind of build on that momentum, it almost lets other people who watch you kind of realise their own problems and become accepting of their own problems as well. So it's kind of good, I think, to see people who aren't maybe the best artist up there, but giving it all, because you can feel it. You can feel it more. And that's kind of, for me, that's a benefit, because you're helping people with like maybe mental health that would think, oh, I can hear that in their vocals and their song, and they'll come to your gig and they'll see what you're doing. Then that will inspire them to be like, do you know what? I can maybe do that. So that's a massive benefit, I think, especially coming from the kind of underground world upwards, because a lot of people I speak to are quite, you know, maybe tainted or feel that they can't progress because of issues they've had in the past. But everybody's got those issues. But if they realise that and kind of came out a wee bit more, then they would realise that we're all damaged and it is just the facade of it. So I think it has a really good cultural impact based on that, to break down the stigma of we can talk about our problems, we haven't had the best upbringing, you know, we've maybe not been raised right, or we maybe don't speak in the best manner, but it's still relatable. It's still very relatable to everybody. So, Would you like to elaborate, Dave, or would I?
I totally agree. Creativity and self-expression is uplifting, and that, like, making music that's what it's at the centre of, it is making and doing and expressing yourself. And that, it also taps into people's misconceptions about what hip-hop and rap and grime are all about sometimes as well, where they think that it's always got an aggression to it, or it's always got like a difficult barrier, like a front up that you can't get through, sort of thing. Where certainly when you work in community projects, like, kids want to rap, and when you get them sat down to rap, then they're being allowed to tell their story in their own voices, where maybe they've been told you have to speak this way or you have to form things this way, and they're being allowed to actually just tell their story and have fun and play with words and express themselves however they feel like it. And that's a totally freeing and uplifting feeling.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So just to, as you were saying there about the some sort of projects that were kicking off. So there's a new education project from the Academy of Music and Sound, and it's called Scottish People Can't Rap. Could you tell us a bit about that?
I think that's two different projects together, Alana.
Is it? Or maybe it's the same question rolled into one.
The first part's the Academy of Music and Sound,
right,
who recently started doing an HNC, HND and hip-hop studies with myself as the tutors. Sure. It's the first time in the country that such a course has been going on. Well, I say that, and Dave's in the room, who's got also a Scottish hip-hop course as well. Dave can talk about that in a wee moment. But the Academy gives people a chance to get basically grassroots skills in hip-hop, whether that's rapping, beat making, production, music theory, performance, all aspects of the vital aspects of the culture. We also teach them some of the bad stuff about the culture as well. We don't cover up and to cut away the bullshit, such as homophobia, sexism and all that, which has been part of hip-hop. We'd certainly look at that and address that, and look at why that happened and why that's not acceptable as well. So we really look at all angles of hip-hop culture in the Academy, and at the moment it's been going good.
Good.
And quite excited about how these new students will come out of this in 2 years' time. And they'll be more skilled than me. because they've sat in a hothouse for 2 years building up their skills and talent, and they'll just be energised and ready to take on the world. So I'm really excited about that.
Good, brilliant. Dave, could you talk to us a little bit about the Scottish People Can't Rap?
Yeah, I can. I mean, firstly, just to talk about what STEG's talking about, I think that what STEG's doing here is kind of world leading and really important in Scotland in particular, because it's part of that continual legitimisation of the art form. If you can study how to play a guitar and you can study how to play drums and you can study other forms of pop music, then you should be able to study hip hop and rap, and it's brilliant to see it coming into the syllabus. And like Steg says about the programmes that I teach on, I think that what Steg's doing and what I'm doing complement each other. And you know, it's really, really exciting to see a pathway through for folks to study, because hip hop, if you look at the language that's used in hip hop since the 80s, the word study your art is in the language of the lyricists from day one. It was always about understanding the historiography of where it came from and the culture that came out of it, and therefore respecting the culture rather than disrespecting it and using it in ways without thinking about what it meant. And then the lyrical side of it was also about like developing understandings of the world around about you and all these sorts of things. So it's brilliant to see that now formalised in education establishments and giving it that credibility. And the Scottish People Can't Rap thing sort of came out of that. So I finished my PhD 3 years ago in hip hop in my own songs, which I didn't know you could do a PhD in your own songs before I'd done it. So it's a PhD by published works in my back catalogue. And what it gave me really was an excuse to study hip-hop more than I'd been able to do previously. It gave me an excuse to really geek out on it and really look at it, at its beginnings and its culture, and how we as Scottish artists have sort of interpreted that and hybridised it and built it into our own authentic way of delivering it. And then Scottish People Can't Rap, which I'd say most, if not all, rappers I've heard people say to them their whole lives, is that thing that hip-hop does where you take a negative and you turn it into a positive. So bad meaning good, and every other phrase that is a negative attribute that you then go, if you're going to call me that name, I'm going to use that name and I'm going to repurpose it and make it work for me. So Scottish People Can't Rap sort of came out of that. And the idea is just for this project is working with Kelman from Neon 8, who's going to do a virtual reality version of a film where hopefully we'll get the opportunity to focus on a bunch of different artists and look at songs that they've written and look at elements of the songs and pull them out and then explain them to a wider audience that hopefully get hooked on it and excited about it and then want to know more.
No, I think it sounds really exciting. And I mean, when I started doing music business in college, and I had started originally doing hip-hop events back then, I never thought it would be possible that you could study hip-hop. So I think it's really quite a breath of fresh air, and it almost kind of makes me want to go back and be a student again.
Yeah,
so.
and as Dave says, one of the joys is for me being able to revisit hip-hop and rediscover the beauty of it for myself, and I'm excited by it, and I can pass it on to the students as well. So that's a brilliant thing.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So just to bring us on to the next question, how have regional Scottish accents become accepted into genres such as grime and drill? Anybody want to go us off?
Are they accepted? There's different accents. There's different accents in hip hop, and I think it's a great thing. Obviously, if you're a Scottish artist, I'd like to hear that Scottish accent. But there's also Scottish artists who are English as well, and from all over the place. I want to hear that accent too. But there's also a school of thought about keeping it ultra Scottish, as in some artists are really regional in Scotland, and then there's some artists who adapt their language slightly to be more palatable for the mainstream audience or for radio play. I don't have a problem with that. I understand that it's important to get the message out there, and if you're talking in a language it's hard for everybody to decipher, then that's maybe not that effective for getting the message out. But also come from the school of keeping it real too. And if that is who you are, then I want to try and decipher who you are. But I think that's something to think about, that there is more than one accent out there, and I love the tapestry of. For me, the voice is the character. So if it's got something unique in it, then that's brilliant. I don't want all the Scottish rappers to sound like the cardboard cutouts of each other. They've all got their own. And even Glasgow and even Dumfries got different accents. And we're 70 miles down the road, and people down here have got different accents. I want to hear that in rappers from Dumfries. I think that's a beautiful thing, the accent. But obviously the battle is, do I flip my accent or do I keep it real? What do you think about that, Dave? I think you're a man who's been through that challenge a few times.
Yeah, totally. And I think Nova will have interesting things to say about this as well, and I'd like to hear it because I think generationally the accent in Scotland has had different issues. So see, if you go back to the 1980s, I can only think of one pop act that sang in a Scottish accent, the Proclaimers.
Yeah.
Right? So just 30 years ago, people didn't even sing in a Scottish accent. Right? And so no pop music was acceptable in our own voices. And that goes back to the thing Steg was saying about like the cringe, and people in Scotland had been brought up to feel uncomfortable hearing their own voices reflected back at them, right? So then move forward a bit into the 90s, and it starts to happen in underground music. So you start to see like the Glasgow indie scene, and you see like Bell and Sebastian and the Delgados and Arab Strap and these sort of underground indie artists using their own voices. You move forward to more recently, and you've got like Twin Atlantic and Frightened Rabbit and huge global artists that are now confident to sing in their own voices. Yeah. In rap, it wasn't ever acceptable to put on an American accent, right? Because it's rooted in honesty and truth.
It is,
and then how can your honesty and truth be you pretending to be someone else? But at the same time, Steg's right, there's a flexibility to it. You can, everybody's listened to their voice recorded back on a phone call or something and gone, oh, I can't believe I sound like that, right? So as vocal artists, we have to take a lot of time to get comfortable with and present ourselves in a way that we're happy with, right? So it's understandable why there's this sort of militant Scottish accent element in some bits of Scottish hip-hop, because it's been a hard-fought thing to get to. But at the same time, we've got more and more diversity in Scotland, and we've got Scottish people who maybe don't sound like they come from Scotland because they have different backgrounds.
Lewis Capaldi.
So that becomes then your truth doesn't sound the same as this person's truth.
Yeah, you're right.
And it takes longer for that authenticity to make sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think.
No, I think that's good.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's kind of a contentious topic in the scene in Scotland, like the whole accent thing. And just last night, I was putting together a playlist for a radio show that I'm doing that's going to be focusing on rap and urban music genres. And I found this new artist that is one of the kind of mainstream sounding ones that I mentioned earlier. And, I don't really know a lot about them, but they sound completely American and they're singing melodically. But I like it, I just really like their music. So it's I don't really have a problem with it, because it's I just like the way it sounds. It's cool. It sounds good. Even though, I don't know. He might speak in a Scottish accent. I don't know him. I've never met him. He probably does though. But, I don't have a problem with it. But I do understand where the people are coming from. You guys have made points about it, about being authentically yourself. And because it kind of represents a deeper issue, that's why people have more of a problem with it. And then, I do also definitely want to acknowledge that there are artists in Scotland making music that don't have Scottish accents, like myself. But I've lived here for over 15 years, so I kind of belong here as well. So that definitely needs to be, I don't really the kind of militant kind of idea, where it's just an ultimatum thing, because that's excluding people that deserve a spot as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And it goes back to what Steg says about there should be... things are much more interesting when there's diversity and difference than if everything's a carbon copy or a cardboard cutout of this is what it sounds like.
I mean, I really like what you were saying. I love accents. Like, I love any type of accent. So for me, I'll be totally honest, when I first got into the Scottish hip-hop scene and listened to Loki and the being that straight up, I didn't like it because it was hard because I'd listened to American hip-hop growing up so long, Cypress Hill, Eminem. So when you actually sat down and listened to the production and the vocal, for me, as a Scottish person, like, I'll totally be honest, like, I didn't like it at first. It took me time to adapt, honestly, maybe a couple of months of hearing it to adapt for my ears to be like, okay, I actually get this now to the point that I love it. Like, I would never turn it over now into me. But it was that difference, I'll never forget it. And it is because when you are growing up with that kind of influence and that sound, that when you're told something is maybe hip hop and you have a preconceived idea of it and you listen to it and it's not what you think, oh, you know, that's not how it's supposed to sound. So a lot of the times when I was taking the guys down to England and we were doing boom bap, there wasn't a great, appeal at first because they're going up there doing hard Scottish accents. And everybody down there's like, what are they saying? I can't understand what they're saying and everything. So there's definitely a cut between when you take that accent regionally, it becomes maybe a problem for other people in that region that's maybe not digested at the same. But there's always that way to make it digestible. Because for me now, I couldn't go back to the way I used to listen to things. So it progressed for me that now I could listen to French hip-hop, Polish hip-hop, South African hip-hop, and to me I just like the different styles of it, the different tones of the voices and the delivery, so the accent actually makes it for me now. But being younger and only thinking, you're growing up with just American hip-hop, like even at that point, even English hip-hop was hard to digest. I remember putting on Chester P for the first time and being like, because it does, if you've never been exposed to that or listened to that, then it's such a shock. It was, honestly. I'm just totally being honest.
Things have changed since those days, though.
They have changed. I mean, I had the same thing with Roots Maneuver. The first time I heard Roots Maneuver's record, I took it back. This doesn't work for me. And then somebody played to me like a couple of months later and I got it, but it takes that minute for your ear to adjust. Mm-hmm.
So it almost kind of makes you think like, maybe we've not been granted with the best accent in the world, but I quite like having that Scottish accent, and to hear the dialect back in a format of something that I can relate to is more enriching to me. So the more that we kind of do that and break down that stigma. So someone had actually, so one of my black friends from Glasgow, hard Scottish accent, and it was one of my London friends were up and they were like, well, I didn't expect you to have this accent to him. And he was like, well, what do you mean? And it's obviously because of the stigma of it being this Scottish accent, and you see somebody and again, you have this preconceived idea of how they're going to talk or be. So to not have that reaction with somebody at first, if it turns out different, is the step forward, and to question it, like, why did I think about that the way I did before? So to do that consistently and break down the accent barrier, I think that becomes more predominant, and that will help hip-hop become more palatable. But when you do have big artists like, again, to bring up Lewis Capaldi, who are straight from Glasgow, you speak to him, he sounds like he's from Penilee or Maryhill or something, and then he goes on stage and sings like, he's from London. So that to me, I think also as well, if he's going out into the mainstream and singing English, but he's from Scotland, then that kind of sets a precedent for younger people to grow up thinking, well, I have to sing like that and not represent my accent because, he's got there but he's not singing in his accent. So I think there'll always be that. It'll either work for you or it either won't, but it's becoming more acceptable now for people to listen to Scottish hip-hop and it be a thing of Scottish rap, and it not be so much of an accent issue anymore. But who knows? I don't know. It seems to be one thing that we always talk about is the accent thing with it. And I suppose that depends on the viewers.
Yeah, the accent's a big part of it. And when we grew up listening to hip-hop first, it was the American accent. So that was sort of like a different instrument almost, with its tones and textures to the Scottish voice. And that was quite a common thing, what you said, Alana, about a lot of people struggling with Scottish hip-hop at first. I know lots of people in the same situation that I can't get my head around that. And then a few months later, or whatever, they're really soaked up. It just clicked. It's just sort of clicked for some reason. But it is because it's a whole different instrument. Mm-hmm. Again, it's like saxophones versus pianos. It's a total different thing, and it does take a time to adjust that as well. So yeah, it's a common thing but I'm interested to see if Dave said that that's not the case anymore, and Nova said that's not the case anymore as well, or not so much. Is that the case? The people are more accepting of the regional accents or the Scottish regional accents in hip hop easier these days, whereas before in Alana's days it was more of a shock to the system to accept the Scottish rap voice.
No, I'd say it's still an issue, definitely.
Okay.
But I think it's more
improved.
Improved.
It's still
We're getting
mainly,
there.
It's still a thing. It's definitely still a thing.
I think as well, sometimes if you're in the bubble of Scottish hip hop community, it comes as a surprise when you talk to somebody like in the street and you're like, you mean you haven't heard of these rappers? You know, or you forget that actually it's not really everywhere.
No, definitely. So I think just as this kind of leads on to second last question anyway, is so how limiting are the stereotypes on this type of music in Scotland? So if we are talking about the stereotypes of hip hop and also the accent, and
stereotypes are very limiting in general. Get them in the bin. All the stereotypes, please. I think just let's start again and create a brand new take on the culture, and that should be what everyone brings to it. And that's what hip-hop's always been, what that community brings to it, what that person brings to it as well. Let's see what they bring to it, and let's just go with the flow on that. Stereotype hip-hopper sort of looks like me. I tell my students, I'm a baggage for the 80s and 90s. You just don't need to be like that. You just can dress how you want. Don't feel you need to wear hats and stuff like that. Do what you do, and that won't make you any less hip-hop than me. In fact, I think it probably makes you more hip-hop than me, because I'm still trying to fit into this stereotype, this baggage that I've still got. But hip hop doesn't need that anymore. Let's get rid of the stereotypes. Let's bring in the freshness, for using an old school word.
Yeah. Do you guys want to elaborate on that, or?
Well, I think, I don't know, it's a bit controversial what I'm going to say, but I feel like in some circles there's maybe a stereotype that a Scottish rapper would be just a white working class young man. But yeah, as we've addressed, with the accent thing, there's people from different backgrounds, and there's some women as well, and I'd like to see more women as well. So that's kind of a stereotype related topic.
Yeah, I guess that the biggest stereotype in Scotland anyway is that we're all wearing kilts and we all have ginger hair and we all chase about haggis all day. So none of us in this room, I'd say, can relate to that stereotype. So to talk about the stereotypes in Scottish hip-hop, I'd say are probably just as barbaric as the stereotype of us as Scotland in general, So...
the stereotypes of all alcohol abusing, drug abusing, wasters who just rap at each other. That's not the case. That's not the case.
I think the gender thing's a really important conversation as well. I think Nova's right that it's exciting to see more and more women involved in hip-hop in Scotland, but the gender balance is still totally skewed. And people, MCs like Nova, like Empress, like Becky and Becca, it's brilliant to see. The thing for me about Becky Wallace and Becca Starr are that's two singers that have been involved in that pop community for a long time, and now to hear them rap is mad exciting. Do you know? Like, it's really exciting. Like, they know their stuff, and then hearing them come out and rap as well. Steg's about to do a hip hop short course.
Yeah.
That's
would you say that hip hop in Scotland has more female participants than music in Scotland? Because I would like to think it has.
No.
I would like to think it has, because I know the rock scene, you go there and it's all guys, it's all white guys as well.
It's hard for me to specifically relate it to genres, only just what I've worked, but there's definitely more females attending the events. Like, it used to be the biggest sausage fest ever. Like, I mean, all hip-hop gigs, you would get one or two girls. Now, the crowd for me as a promoter is nearly 50-50. You're getting a lot more girls coming along. There is more female rappers came about in the past 2 years than there was the past 5 years before that, which is really good to see. But I think there'll always be that... it depends on your kind of nurturing nature of the music. So if you're getting nurtured into, if it's maybe your dad that showed you the CD, then you always maybe look up to music and think, well, it has to be male figure fronted. Or if it's maybe your mum that goes, you heard this Eminem CD, then you would think, well, that's like a family showing you a male figure. So you in your head, you would relate. That wouldn't be an issue. You wouldn't see that as an issue. But if it's maybe getting passed down through a generational thing, then you would maybe see it as more sexist. I don't know if that makes any sense, I'm trying to say, but I do think that it will always have its stereotypes due to the way people have nurtured and natured it, and the way that people have viewed it, how they've grew up on it, and just certain ways that people make their opinion, and people will just think things aren't just acceptable, whether it's hip hop or not. Somebody might be like, why is that girl up there with big earrings in and a short skirt? And that's unacceptable to them. They wouldn't even look into the music. It would just be an unacceptable view for them. So I think it's always going to be hard to break down the stereotype of females and males within the industry, because there's so many of it. There's so many conflicting views that by the time you get to the end of it, none of it would work. If you really listened to it and done it all, none of it would work. And the fact that it does work is because it is conflicting views and it is trying to break those stereotypes. But I think females will always be underrepresented just because it's the music industry in general. Yeah. But I do think it is nice to see more women coming through. I'd say Glasgow ways, there's a few more from Edinburgh, like Honey Farm and stuff as well. And that just wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. It wouldn't have been as encouraged.
Different styles as well, and different influences, and making music in different ways. That's one of the few benefits of a lack of investment in the genres over the years, is that because it hasn't blown up as like this is the thing that went mainstream, people aren't following that trend, but everybody's sort of doing their own thing. So I think one of the main things, the main benefit, or probably the only benefit of a lack of investment or sort of cultural capital, has been that it's diverse and exciting.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Would you like to say?
No.
Sorry, I just thought you were going to say something. Cool. So just to lead us on to one of the last questions, what is the next stage and how do you think the scene will develop? Steg, what's the next stage for you, do you think?
Unfortunately, I don't have that answer at the best of times, and certainly with COVID at the moment, I don't really know what's next for the scene. But what I do know is it's growing. It's certainly a lot more young people getting involved in it, and that's going to be a good thing. In terms of the shape of it, as Dave says, it's very diverse and it could go any direction, and we don't have a successful hit maker at the moment, so not everyone's sort of copycatting a certain style of rap or a certain direction of raps. So it's wide open, and that's quite exciting too.
Mm-hmm. Dave?
Similarly, we're in a mad, unique place just now in terms of putting music out and not getting to play music live. I think collaboration is probably one exciting place where music's going just now, where hip-hop's going just now. It's exciting for me to look at the different types of music that folks are making, and you maybe cherry pick a bit of this and a bit of that, and then you reinterpret it and put it together yourself. Because there is such a new wave of exciting young artists coming in, like doing things their own way, and like reinterpreting the whole idea and making their own music out of it, then it's also for the older artists like me and Steg to be influenced by that and excited about it, and encouraging about it and supportive where we can be as well, So collaboration for me is a huge thing, and I've had the fortune of working with Steg on a couple of projects the last couple of years, and I think when you're collaborating with people on things, and it takes you down avenues and in directions you wouldn't otherwise have gone,
yep.
And then develops you as an artist as a result.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
I think, yeah, because of COVID, obviously, I think people really need to focus on creating and then also, like, you know, creating it but making it to the end step. Because, you know, there's so many artists that will be writing songs, recording demos, and then they've got, you know, a massive folder of music, but none of it's out, and they don't have a clear path to get there. So I kind of would like to start a label, like, maybe because, like, you know, I'm a bit younger than you guys, so I've been only making music in the age of social media, but you guys are more familiar with, like, the whole label thing and how it's, like, kind of a cage, and you could only really release music if you had a label, so it's quite, like, an exclusive thing. But now I kind of have a romanticized idea of it. Maybe, like, I'd just kind of form a collective, and it'd be kind of a way to inject that self-belief into artists that aren't all the way there yet. So it's like kind of like a support kind of thing in terms of getting to the end goal. So I'd quite like to do that in the next few years. But yeah, I think, like, creating, and yeah, I don't think anyone should be vilified for, like, you know, the accent thing, or, like, not subscribing to stereotypes or breaking the mold. And just people should support each other, because it'll just bring everything more forward if you're supporting other artists. Like, even if you don't completely love what they're doing, you know, you might love the next thing, you might like the thing after that. So just kind of keep it moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good to kind of keep the community. I guess for the next stage, I couldn't really speak for the whole community, but the way that I've seen it move would be there's going to be more artists coming out and more movement for Scottish hip-hop artists, I'd say, over the past couple of years than there was 10 years previous now. I mean, people are getting some gigs down in London, they're getting some radio play, they're getting involved with, like, collaborations with other big artists down there. And that's a huge step forward, because the only other Scottish artist that I knew to do that was Bose in the Deluxe, Southside Deluxe 1987, that their album was released, and they went on to do big things that even now still people speak about, Two Tone Committee, and that was 30 years ago. For me as a promoter, I think the next stage is going to be looking into more interactive events within communities, you know, maybe possibly going to, like, community halls and getting kind of local artists to come along and speak about what they've been up to, and kind of lead some kind of more of their kind of workshops based from their kind of home, so it's more interactive, because I can't see as a event promoter that, you know, we're going to have the outlet to use any of these developing artists on stages anytime soon. So to try and develop the kind of interactive, you know, kind of events that, you know, we're still getting people together in a safe space and we're still kind of putting it out there, that's kind of the way forward for me, I'd say, as an event promoter. And I'd hope that the scene almost can still adapt. Like, there's loads of artists coming out with loads of good music, but it's not going anywhere because we're missing that kind of live event infrastructure just now. So to try and have that in place over the next sort of month or 2 months, I think would help get that, you know, flowing again. It's like, okay, we've got music and now we can go do this, and that will lead us on to that. And if you're just putting music out all the time and there is no place that you can go play a gig, then it kind of leaves you in a bit of a grey area. So to try and fill that up as quickly as possible, really, for me as an event organiser, that's what I would say. But
I'd like to go back to what Nova just said a moment ago about how we should support each other's, and even some of the art that we don't, maybe not like that one so much right now, but we can see the potential in you as an artist. I think we need to do that. As hip-hoppers, we've got more in common with each other than we have from everybody else. So that is something that we have in a strength. So let's develop that strength and be aware that actually we're all in the same boat together. I know it's very competitive, hip-hop, and we sort of, because of that does create a barrier between artists. I don't want to tell you my secret sauce or whatever. But we need to. Mm-hmm. We need to, because we're going to get better product and better entertainment and better music and better creators at the end of it. So let's get rid of some of the hang-ups about supporting each other and celebrating everybody's music. Even if it's not quite a song that you like right now, you're making hip-hop, and I respect that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the bottom line. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thank you for having us involved in Freest Music Conference. Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
Cheers.